All right, so what I'm doing here is grinding off the paint on these weld-on hinges right here. And I have been struggling with a design to make this hurricane ready, so to speak. So let's face it, if you make something like this, it's not quick and easy to take down, you're just not gonna do it. And you're just gonna leave your stuff out there and risk for damage. So these are very heavy duty weld-on hinges. It's at least a 1/2 inch shaft. It may actually be 5/8 of an inch thick. There's no way you can ever shear this off with the application that I'm using it on. So what I'm gonna actually do is weld part of the hinge to this big subframe that I made, and this external frame right here is gonna get welded to the other half. So I can actually slide these off, carry them inside with a certain number of solar panels. You're gonna see here in a little bit whenever we get done, but I wanted to slip apart hinges so I could do that, but I needed something that was very strong. Okay, so here's where things are cool about this design and probably gonna be a little controversial. So I just got online and used a solar calculator to figure out, it tells me the perfect degrees my solar panels need to be to the sun for every single month of the year because the sun is always moving. So I'm gonna go ahead and set up 3 optimal degrees here for my panels. One is gonna be a lower tilt for the winter, a medium tilt for the springtime, and a very high tilt for the overhead sun in the summer. And the cool thing about this is I can always come back and drill more holes for different tilts, or I can set this all the way up to having a specific degree for every single month of the year. 12 holes in here. So now you can see the bars that I just put in there are gonna be adjustable as I move this up and down. And now I can actually peg these bars into these holes that I'm about to set once I figure out my angles. Now I bought this little handy dandy magnetized angle finder right here. You turn it on and I can put it on the steel and it'll let me know the degrees. So I'll clamp it right on here, tilt this up and down till I find the optimal degrees that I'm wanting. Everything's based off of 90 degrees with the calculator that I just found. And once I get it to my 3 optimal settings, I'll stop, drill my holes through, and then move on to my next optimal setting, drill the holes through. This will all make sense once we do the final installation. Okay, we have achieved our first setting, and you can see how high up in the air these panels are going to be. This is for the overhead, middle of the summer sun right here. This will be the most extreme tilt that I'll carry this to. All right, so now that the center is bolted, I can release the sides, drill them out because it's fully supported. And then I'll just repeat this process down a couple more times, getting my next 2 angles. So I'm leaving myself 3 foot, enough room to come behind and work on the panels, disconnect, do my wiring, but still close enough to the building that I'm not just encroaching on the yard. I can do a nice mulch bed here, rock, something like that, and keep it weed free. All right, buddy, you gonna help me dig? Okay, so my holes are dug now and we are ready to fill with gravel. So here comes one of the parts in my videos to where, well, we do a little bit of education. I love learning. Y'all know that if you've watched the channel for a while, and anytime I feel like I have something to offer, I like to share it. So you're getting more than just a solar array video right here. So I'm gonna pack the bottom of these holes, a little bit of dirt that's down there. No point in having it all loose. And when it comes to setting a post, oh my Lord, is that the most controversial thing that you can go read on the internet. Everybody has a million different ways on how you set a post. Some say in dirt only. I can agree with that. Some say fully encased in concrete. I highly disagree with that method. And then some say the only way to do a wood post is to pour your hole full of concrete, put a plate down in, and actually set the post on top. That's a good method when you're tying post to post to post. So the biggest mistake that people make, in my opinion, is setting a post directly down in concrete. They'll pour the concrete, go set the post in, stake it up, call it good. What you've essentially just done is sealed off the bottom of that post. So in my previous career, I had to know everything there is to know about wood fibers and specifically pine trees themselves. If you were to look at wood fibers inside of a tree, everything that makes a tree up, they're actually hollow. They look like straws. There's capillary action to wood fibers. This is what carries nutrients and water up to the leaves, top of the tree, and pulls resins, the water, everything else back down come wintertime. So wood fibers still work even after the tree is cut down and dead. They are hollow fibers. So sealing the bottom of that tree completely off in concrete, water is going to find its way in to the post. Concrete itself is porous, although it's very slow draining. That's what can typically rot a post out. So if you leave the bottom of the post open, water has somewhere to now free flow back out through all those, well, we'll just call them straws, but those wood fibers themselves. So the best thing you can do is layer the bottom of your hole with some gravel. I like to do around 4 to 6 inches, because gravel itself will never completely seal off like even dirt will, because there's a lot of clay in the soil, and that could keep the post from actually free draining as well. So gravel on the bottom, compact, set the post directly on the gravel, then you pour your concrete around the post. So again, that way the bottom of the post is open to the free-flowing gravel, then to the soil, and that continues to always carry water away from the post and not keep it completely submerged and rotted out. Okay, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on the wiring here because I just released a video showing how to series parallel solar panels, which is what we're doing here. So I have a certain voltage range that I have to work with for my ecoflow Delta Pro, and I have to stay under 150 volts is what I'm really watching out for. Now each of these panels, if you read on the back, are rated at 24 volts open circuit. Once we put a load on them, they're kind of showing around 20.4, and I'm seeing that whenever I run them. Actually, it's usually a little less, and it also depends on the temperature of your solar panels. So long story short, with 12 panels at 20 volts, if I were to wire them all up, well, we'd be 240, 250 volts, way over what's recommended. So we have to do what's called series parallel. So every time I series one panel to the next, which is putting a positive and a negative together, see that? We're upping the voltage, but we're leaving the amperage exactly the same. When you parallel, as in put two positives, two negatives together, that increases your amperage. So I've got two sets going on here. These 6 are considered a set because this piece is removable. I've got them all series together, and I'm reading a little over 130 volts right now, which is good. I'm under the 150 volts recommended by ecoflow. Same thing over here, all the positives and negatives connected together, which is called seriesing. Now I have this side reading about 130 volts. Then you take Y adapters or branch adapters. Now I hook the positive from this set, the positive from this set. That's called parallel whenever you hook two positives and two negatives together. So what I've just done there is increase my amperage to 10 amps, but I did not increase my voltage. Whenever you parallel, amperage increases, voltage does not. So these are all 5 amp panels. When you series, voltage goes up, amperage stays the same. So this side is 5 amps, this side's 5 amps. They're both around 130 volts. Parallel here, voltage stays the same, 130 plus, and I'm up to 10 amps. And that ecoflow Delta can go up to 15 amps. So one other thing worth mentioning, by me keeping my voltage high like I'm doing and my amperage relatively low, you can run a smaller cable. I'm actually using 10 gauge copper, 10 coated copper, that's made just for solar applications. But keep that in mind, the higher your amperage is on your system, the thicker and more expensive cable you have to purchase. The higher the voltage, the smaller the cable, as long as the amperage is kept within reason. Now I may have to straighten this flexible loom tube back out, but I decided to do that because we're working with some pretty decent voltages here, and I want to make for sure that my wire is protected. One other thing worth mentioning, the length of run that you do determines your wire size as well. Luckily there's good calculators online for a wire size. All right, I finally see the wire coming out the other end here. Okay, so now I have my wires pulled through the wall. Make sure they are not connected before you do this. Again, we're dealing with a decent amount of voltage here. And I purchased me a cheap kit off of Amazon that's got a solar crimper and some connectors. So we need to put ends on this right here. Also purchased what's called an XT60 to MC4 connector. This is your standard solar connectors. This is what the backside of my ecoflow Delta Pro takes. And I made sure I found one that uses the same heavy 10 gauge wiring that I'm using everywhere else. So I need to pay attention to what I need where. So I need this connector and this connector for the positive, these other two for the negative. So it's quite straightforward. It comes with two different style connectors. Just make sure the male and female are going together exact opposite on your wiring connectors. These are rated for up to 10 gauge wiring. So put it in there just like that. It comes with a nice little crimping tool and ratchet it closed. Now you can use that as is, but we're going to go ahead and solder. I like to solder, especially a connection that's running this much voltage and a decent amount of amperage. All right, now we will solder this connection, which will give me the best connection possible. Now we'll take our connector apart, slide this piece over. All right, now we'll put everything together, tighten and seal everything up. Okay, so I got my cables ran over here in this area. This is where I'm temporarily going to put the Delta Pro. And on the back side, back here, is my hookup for this XT60 connector. We'll plug that in. Then on the end of this cable is my two MC4 connectors that we'll plug to these wires that we have run in from the solar array. It's just that simple. Everything's automatic at this point. The unit takes care of all the charging, the kicking, off and on, everything else. Now I'm going to be honest, as of right now, this is a two-person job for setup. One person needs to pull this out while the other person puts the center pole in whatever position for angle that we want. Because this is very heavy, and because it pivots at the top, not in the middle, well, it's a little out of balance. But we did that for a reason, to make all this removable. But keep in mind, right now I'm only set up for 3 positions: winter, spring, and summer. I have the average angles met for those. So that means I'm only out here 3 times a year adjusting this. If we find that we're going to use this far more than I'm thinking, far more than backup, I can drill more holes. I'll show you this here in a second, and make positions for every single month of the year. All right, so like I said, it's definitely a two-person job, which is no big deal to lift it up out there, or either you got to come up with some creative way to lift it yourself. But I'm thinking about mounting a boat winch back here, a cable-driven boat winch that may go over with a bar that reaches out and can hook to the bottom. I can winch and lift this up. I'm just not sure about the forces that'll be applied there to make that happen. And I really don't know if I'm going to change this enough throughout the year that I shouldn't just wait for a weekend or an afternoon when my wife's home, and we both can just come out and do this together in a couple of minutes. All right, so I'm going to start with this center pole right here. I don't know how well the camera shows it, but you can say I have 3 mounts. This is a 45-degree mount, which is what my local solar calculator called for the proper angle for me during the winter. It's a good average. Moving up a little higher, I think it was like 65 degrees for spring, all the way up to 80. It's either 85 or 86 degrees. I put this in for the peak of summer when the sun's directly overhead. Now that's going to have this panel way out in the yard, not looking the world's best, but believe it or not, I can mow right underneath it and do whatever I need like that. Now here's the other beautiful thing about the system. Again, 3 holes ready to go. If I find that I'm using this way more than I ever thought, I can come out here and put my angle finder on the frame itself, adjust it, and I can drill 12 holes and actually have precise measurements, the perfect angle for every single month, and just move this 1 time a month. Okay, do y'all want to see something absolutely insane? I just plugged up the wires. We'll go over all this in just a second. So look, these are pointed south, southeast, this direction, which is going to give me the intense morning sun and the really intense midday sun. Okay, the sun is over here. It's late afternoon, and you can see crazy cloud cover. I was expecting nothing. This isn't pointed toward it at all. That's a lot of clouds. Look at this. 430, 440, 450, 460. Holy smokes, we're going to 500 watts. That is insane. These panels must be extremely efficient. How on the earth we're getting 500 watts. Let's go back outside and look. And the sun is not even out, and it's pointed way away from these panels. I can't wait to see what these are going to do on a clear day and when the sun is, you know, from 10 to 2. Okay, so the whole point of this build was to show that this can be broken down in the matter of minutes, taken inside in the event that we have a hurricane coming or some of these early spring severe cold fronts that come through that have hail, tornadoes in them, things such as that. And I've got two ways for protection. One, I can fold this down and completely bolt it to handle high winds and leave it out here. Or two, we can break it down completely. So if we have, say, a hurricane coming and we're worried about debris damaging our solar panels, I wanted to make something that would break down nice and quick, be convenient. If I had to take every single one of these panels apart and all 8 screws per panel, unwire every single panel, you're talking an hour plus, and that's so highly inconvenient, I probably would never do it. So let's run a quick test and see exactly how long it takes me and my wife to fold this up from working position like it is right now, break it down, carry it inside. I'm hoping it's just a few minutes. That'll be as convenient as you possibly could imagine for a 1200 watt solar array. Okay, for starters, all I have to do is disconnect 2 cables back here. Now we're no longer connected to the inside. Let's go ahead and check our time. And I do need to disconnect these Y adapters. So each set, again, there's 6 panels over here, 6 over here. I'm calling that a set. That way they are not actually connected when we go to pull these apart. Now I need to take the bolts out holding these arms. All right, so now the entire structure is being held up by this bolt. Okay, so now I'm going to lift up on this, take the pressure off that bolt in the center, and Tiffany's going to pull it out. This is ready to fold up. All right. Okay, now all that's left is to take out these 3 bolts. Okay, so now that these 2 pieces are completely disconnected, the whole point of putting them on weld-on hinges was so they can swing out and slide right off. So we're at that point already. So I'm gonna pull this one forward, and then we're gonna go toward Tiffany. So just pull and it should drop down. Okay. All right, I'm gonna come around to this side so I'm the one that walks backwards. So now you can see how this whole process works. Welder on hinge, can slide these right off and put them back together with 6 bolts. Now this panel can be carried right inside the shop in the event of a hurricane. Can ride that out and we can bring it right back out here, slide it right back on, bolt everything back together with 6 bolts, plug it in, and we're functional again. Okay, so in the matter of a few minutes, completely broken down, moved inside. Now we can wait for the storm or hurricane, hailstorm, whatever it may be to pass, can bring it back out. I thought it was gonna fight us a lot more than it did, sliding it back on the hinges, because it's kind of blind, you can't see, plus you're holding up a little over 100 pounds. But believe it or not, we stuck a 2x4 into the bottom, it worked out perfect, and we got it slid back on relatively quickly. So from complete disassembly, from starting with everything perfect, unwiring it, taking the bolts out, breaking it down, and busting the first piece off took 4 minutes. Now with that said, it took us longer because, well, I got the wrong socket, had to go back inside and get it. We had a little bit of fumbling around, but as far as actual work time, looking at the stopwatch, 4 minutes. That is awesome to break down a 1200 watt solar array and move it inside out of the storm. Now I just realized I told y'all there was one other thing that I forgot to show you. You can see down here on the bottom, I have drilled holes all the way through here and on this side. There's welded in nuts down there through that 2-inch square tubing and at that back corner. So essentially what that means, if we're getting one of those, you know, severe springtime thunderstorms to where there's some warnings with it, there's a chance of hail and high winds, but you know, it's a slight chance. What I can do is actually come out here and take those bars out really quick, fold this up, and actually screw and bolt this through locking it down into the frame, straight in the vertical position. Now, yes, that'll still catch wind, but it won't catch nearly as much hail if there's a risk of that. We can just fold this up, then it's straight up and down. This position right here would absolutely catch hail if it was a problem. I'm gonna cut to some tests I've been running the last few days with this. Go check it out. I am highly impressed by the input that I'm getting from this system right here. Check out these few tests and then I'll meet y'all right back to wrap this up. Check that out. The sun just come out, shot up to over 1,500 watts. Unit's actually got some relatively loud fans. It really ramped up when that much power started coming in. But it's very cloudy. We just had storms fly through. So you can see my solar is all over the place. So just running some tests. I'm running all my shop lights off of this unit. You can see we're pulling over 1,000 watts. I've got some very powerful shop lights going right now. But check this out. All right, you see we're shooting from 500 to up to 1,400 watts. And it's because clouds left and right. And believe it or not, it's already later in the afternoon, so the sun's not directly over this. I was shocked at just seeing the power that we did because I've only got 1,200 watts of panels out there. Alright, so one other thing I want to show. See, we're pulling 277 watts right there, staying pretty steady. It's now 4:30 in the afternoon. The sun's going to set in a little over an hour, about an hour and a half. I mean, it's beginning of February here, but check this out. The sun, I mean, it is 90 degrees away from the panels. The panels need the sun to be over here. I don't know how it's even picking up anything, but I am highly impressed to see that we're still getting 277 watts with the sun going in that direction and about to set over there. That's crazy. I didn't figure we'd pick up anything off the panels this time of day. So it looks like pretty much the entire day, from the time the sun comes up over here to the time it's going to set, I'm going to be able to pull something. I didn't think that was going to be possible. And the majority of my wattage input is going to be during the middle of the day. So what that means is as I upgrade my system down the road or whatever I go with, upgrade panels, everything else, but more importantly, add batteries, I think I'm going to be able to store a lot of extra power. As of right now, this is just a backup solution, but we may continue to build and add another solar array and go to where we take the house completely offline later. One other thing worth mentioning, you can see all this cable I have right here. This is 100 amp service cable, and believe it or not, I can actually run it from the shop. I'm thinking about trenching it underneath the ground, tying in over at the house. Now, I had to use that cable in order to build the house, but long story short, I have it available. It's on my mind. If we wind up building a big enough system out here, putting another solar array in, maybe getting another Delta Pro or doing a DIY system, whatever we do, well, we may be able to take the house completely off the grid and run it off solar, and I'll keep just a meter over here at the shop for my main everyday power and for all my big heavy duty power tools that I use. All right, so check this out. It is next morning and I'm pulling over 600 watts. What's up, buddy? What's up, buddy? All right, so I'm running a test here. You can see the sun just came up over the treetops. We know yesterday up until about 5 o'clock I was able to pull some power with the sun setting all the way over here. And keep in mind, this is the 1st of February. This is not peak sunlight for me. So check that out. It just come up over the treetops and I'm already pulling 600 watts out of this panel. This is another reason I kind of wanted my panel face south-southeast, because if you run your system all night long when it's not charging at all, it's going to be the most discharged first thing in the morning, and I want it power as quick as I can get it. So toward that morning sun and noon sun is going to quickly charge just as soon as that sun comes up over the trees. But I am amazed. These panels seem really efficient. We're barely peeking over the trees right now, first thing in the morning, and I'm already pulling 600 watts out of this array. So we're going to watch it the next couple of hours. This is going to be my first test where it looks like it's going to be clear and I can get up to that mid-morning, midday sunlight. I'm curious to see if we go over 1200 watts again like we did yesterday. All right, so check that out. I just walked in after talking to y'all. We've already shot from 600 to 700 watts looks like we're gonna fly up to capacity very quickly. All right, so another quick little update. It's about an hour and a half later. You can see we're just under 1100 watts. It's only 9:30 in the morning. That is awesome. All right, so it is another day, and I thought this would be a really good test. So my unit is fully charged, but I've got it set up in the app to where it'll go ahead and pull in at least whatever the output wattage is. So I've got a lot turned on. We're pulling over 1,000 watts out. And as you can see, I'm bouncing between 650 and 700 watts in. Now we're 715. And this is a hazy day, kind of a new test here. Sorry, buddy. Should stand behind the door. The sun is behind just a haze, a bunch of clouds. This is kind of how it's been all day. But it is midday, so this is just about as good as the sun's going to get. But even with a really thick haze, we're still pulling 700 plus watts out of this panel set. So I've been very impressed with what I've been seeing. On a clear day, I'm maxing these out at 1200. Actually, I had one day where I set it over 1400 for a little bit, but that was a relatively cool day. The sun had just come out, so I think that had a lot to do with it. I've always heard the cooler the panel is, the more efficient it is. But yesterday, when the panels were out in the sun all day long, it was a clear day, sun was out the entire day. Even before I hit the peak of the day, I was maxing these out, holding around 1190 to 1200 watts. I mean, it was just staying right there at full capacity. So I am highly impressed with these panels. All right, here we go again. 1260 watts I just seen. I'm consistently holding over 1200 watts. Look at that. Staying at 1260, 1270. May go to 1300 watts. So what did y'all think about that? These panels for $85 panels were crazy efficient. So that's one of the main reasons I went with a 100 watt panel over a big residential panel. I looked at going with some 300 plus watt models, but multiple reasons. Cost per watt, these were some of the best out there, minus a huge 6-pack deal that I seen on some 320 watt panels. In the event of damage, well, I'm replacing one $85 panel instead of a big several $100 single panel. That really kind of sold me as well. Plus, I love the flexibility of all the series and parallels and everything else that I can do with these. They're just easier to handle. I find them a little easier to wire. Again, cheap to replace. I've already bought some spares and stuck inside because the price was right in the event that, say, we do get that hailstorm or something. Well, I'd much rather replace an $85 panel than $300 something or $400 panel, if you know what I mean. Now, I'm not knocking the residential panels. They're probably a little bit better built. I don't know that they can be any more efficient than this. I have been consistently getting over wattage out of these, and it's now warmed up hot. I can't say it's because they're cold. They've got pollen all over them. I can literally write my name in them, and I'm still pulling over the 1200 watts that these are supposed to give me. It's a win-win situation. I'm very happy I went with these. Now, moving forward, the plan is this is always intended to be backup for us. But as the channel grows, and if you show more interest in stuff like this, we may build an exact copy of this right here, going up to 2400 watts. Plus, we have a big roof up here. We could add even more panels. I have a way to wire from the building all the way over to the house. We could eventually take this from a backup solution to taking the house off-grid, for example, or taking the shop completely off-grid. Minus, I'm always going to have 1 meter somewhere because I run some very heavy-duty power tools out here, and I do a lot of work from time to time, and may do some side business work in the future to where I'm going to be very heavily dependent on 240 volts. Now, with that said, we're wanting to move up to 240 volts on our solar setup down the road. We may build us a DIY system. We may wind up adding a second ecoflow delta and building a system out there. We're just not sure what the path's going to be, but we know 100% sure we're probably going to double the solar array up, and we're going to go up to split phase and get 240 volts so we can run, say, the complete house, washer, dryer, central AC, everything off of solar. So hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to continuing to build our solar system out and give us some off-grid dependency. Catch you on the next one.